how our psychology becomes our business. And I think it's a really core issue for leaders at this time. So practically speaking, let's look at a problem that we have that's a recurring problem, a real sticky problem, and one that we've tried, HR to fix. We've maybe changed systems, put in a system, and put money into trying to fix the problem. It might look as if it's fixed for a while, and then the problem reoccurs, or it might pop up in another department, but it looks like the same or feels like the same problem. And there are these problems that recur around the company, really hard to fix. And they're problems that I get called in to help look at. And let me tell you about them. Let me tell you why. They are the thing that nobody dealt with initially. They're also the thing that nobody wants to deal with. And I call it the swamp. And the reason I call it the swamp is that it is that real sticky energy, and it relates to our unconscious. So that's why we don't want to go there. Research tells us that we are 10% conscious and 90% unconscious. Now, I found that out about 15 years ago, and it was a real shock to me. I thought if it was 50-50, maybe 50% of us, we were 50% conscious, 50% unconscious, we'd stand a 50-50 chance of being conscious, unconscious. But like 10% conscious, 90% unconscious. The swamp, as I call it, is 90%. And so if you don't look at that, if I realized that a problem, 90% of it was unconscious, I would be crazy not to look at that 90%. Yeah. And yet we don't. We push things into our unconscious as we grow up. Things like we're not good enough, or unworthy, childhood, impurities, all these things that we push in, and they become our unconscious. And if we don't make them conscious, they get acted out in our world around us. So, as Carl Jung said, until we make our unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we will call it faith. And that's a big way of saying it, to say it will direct our life. The 90%, that swamp, will direct our life. And so, we can say, I guess, in business, we can say, well, we're immune from all that. We're in business. We run, with dashboards and algorithms and, data. We make decisions based on this, and we're so immune from all of this. Well, let me tell you, you're not immune. You're so not immune. To the extent that Cathy O'Neill, a data scientist, has written a book called The Weapons of Math Destruction, about how biased algorithms are and how biased even the data is that makes up the algorithms. And she went to say that models are just opinions embedded in maths, and it's those opinions that come from our 90% unconscious. The opinions come from the swamp. And I've sat at meetings where we're constructing algorithms, constructing dashboards, and the people around the table are adding in what they feel is needed in that algorithm, or what they feel is needed in that system. That feeling comes from our unconscious. And so the neuroscientists, Lodge and Tabor, said emotion enters the decision stream well ahead of conscious thought, which means that emotion is what's driving a lot of what we're doing. And then we use conscious thought to rationalize what the emotion has already fired off in our system. So this is why the swamp is so important, and why we don't look at it. It's if we take an iceberg, that 10% of the iceberg on top, the 90% is what we don't see. It goes unseen, and we only see it when it gets reflected in the problems. And some of those problems are like a bump in the road. We kind of we hit the bump and then we hit it again, and we realize, oh, that's the bump. It's a kind of familiar thing that we know these problems are very hard to fix. We can't get to them, and they're part of the culture. And as leaders, we reflect. We shape the culture. The culture reflects ourselves. So the culture is reflecting 10% conscious and 90% unconscious. That's what's getting reflected in our organizations. So why would you bother looking at the 90%? Well, for me, it's such a large percentage that it's hard not to. I personally like looking at the 90%. That's just what I've always liked. Because putting in systems and all, you find that some problems don't get fixed, and really the only way to sort them is, that I found, to delve into that 90%, and it tends to be the 90% associated with the leader, because the leader shapes culture. So one of the other things, reasons for going into the 90%, is for visionary leaders who go into those murky waters. What I found is, in there, they also find their personal gold. So at some point that got pushed into the unconscious as well. And so when they bring that personal gold back into the organization, that's when the culture and the success rate of the organization really change, really take off. And that's the work that I love doing with clients, to get them to understand what's in there in the 90%, and that you can harness that for clearing problems, and also for finding your personal gold as a leader. And I think the leaders who go into those murky waters, they're the difference between leaders and visionary leaders. Visionary leaders are willing to go there and get the benefits and bring the benefits back to the culture of your organization. I'm Vincent McMahon, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.